Hello, welcome to my channel. Today's story is about the cult that was once in Georgia. Trigger warning, this story will talk about crimes, including child SA. I'll be linking my sources in the description. This is a story that's worth a read if you are interested in learning about this cult. The more I personally read, the more interesting it became. To start, a little bit of a backstory about the founder. His name was Dwight York, aka Malachi Z. York, and he was born on June the 26th of 1945. He founded a religious group around 1967 in New York, which started out originally as an American black Muslim group. York himself actually was convicted before he became a prophet. He was sentenced to probation in 1964 after pleading guilty to a misdemeanor charge of R-ing a 13-year-old girl. He was arrested again in 1964 and convicted January of 65 for assault and some other charges, which he was sentenced to 3 years in state prison. He was paroled October of 1967, and this is where the story is going to begin. York had between 2,000 to 3,000 followers by the 1970s. This group had set up chapters in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and Trinidad. They had opened up bookstores in those areas as well to have a source of income. Now, York originally had incorporated parts of Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and many esoteric beliefs and concepts. Now, he kept changing his teachings of the religion, and he kept changing the name of the group many times. A few of the numerous names of the group included Holy Tabernacle Ministries, Ansaru Allah Community, Yamasee Native American Moors of the Creek Nation. Now it's known as the Nuwaubian Nation or Nuwaubian Movement. In the late 1980s, abandoning the Muslim theologies, he started including UFO religion and Kemetism. Kemetism is also referred to as Egyptian neopaganism or Neterism, which is a revival of ancient Egyptian worship of a few gods like Anubis, Mate, Bast, and others. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any of these names. The religious aspect of the organization was styled with a mixture of Native American and ancient Egyptian themes. York also at points had said that he was an extraterrestrial from a distant galaxy. And at one point, the Nuwaubians claimed that they were waiting for a spaceship to come and get them and take them away. A former follower of his name was Robert J. Rohan, had a critical view of York's changes that he was making to the religion, as noted in this following interview. Malachi York came up with the idea to move down south because he was under FBI investigation. He provided us, as his followers, the bogus rationale that we were moving down south to meet our spiritual parents. He always was quick to forget that he gave more than one reason for many changes that he introduced throughout the organization. Now, after moving to Georgia, York and his followers claimed affiliation with Masons and with the Jewish, Christian, and Egyptian faiths. Once he started changing religious ideas, the older followers became skeptical and left the group, Rowan said, and this is what happened to me. In the early 1990s, York and his followers moved to Putnam County, Georgia. There, they built a compound on over 473 acres of farmland called Tamare. This is when they became known as the United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors. Tamare had ancient Egyptian-themed buildings, including 2 large pyramids, several smaller pyramids, all painted with ornate hieroglyphics, and other structures. They held church services in one of the pyramids. The larger pyramids were actually about 40 feet tall. One of them was black, and the other one was gold. There were also numerous Egyptian statues of gods like Isis, some animal-headed deities, and other iconic figures, including a sphinx. The Nuwaubians had about 500 disciples that moved to the Georgia compound. Now, thousands of visitors would actually flock to Tamare on York's birthday in June, which they called Savior's Day. When they moved to Putnam County originally, they were considered really eccentric, but tolerable by the locals. They wore cowboy hats and cowboy boots trying to, fit in. They started changing when they just started like distributing leaflets, dressing in Egyptian clothing, and attacking Caucasians, and started claiming racial persecution during a zoning conflict. They alienated many of the residents, black and white alike. In 1998, there was an injunction against the construction and building uses that violated zoning codes, including having a nightclub in a warehouse on their property. They started spreading out the leaflets, charging Caucasian officials of racial discrimination. Threats mounted, and an eviscerated dog carcass was left at the home of the county attorney. Now, they started losing African American support in part by trying to take over the NAACP chapter. Around 2001, the group actually started putting up their own candidates for public office, to get into public office to help start changing some of the laws, and they were defeated. They didn't win. Now, trigger warning again. This is the part where we start talking about the crimes that Malachi York was convicted of, which again is child SA. On May the 8th of 2002, Tamare was raided by a joint force of local and state law enforcement, ATF agents, and the FBI. Now, there were fears that the raid might turn violent and end up turning into another Waco, Texas. So York and his wife were arrested prior to the raid, actually at a grocery store in Milledgeville, Georgia, which is about 20 miles south of Eatonton. No shots were fired. The FBI's hostage rescue team did use tear gas, and everything went according to plan without a single person being hurt. And they were arrested for racketeering, transport of minors for use, which is actually known as the Mann Act. It was a 1910 federal law which prohibited transporting minors across state lines for illegal sex. He was also arrested for child M on girls as young as 4 years old. York was charged with 74 counts of child M, 29 counts of aggravated child M, 1 count of R, 4 counts statutory R, 5 counts of enticing a child for indecent purposes, 2 counts of exploitation of a minor, and 1 count of influencing a witness. His main wife, Sarah Johnson, was charged with 4 counts of child M and 1 count of aggravated child M, and 3 other Nuwaubian women were also charged with child M. Now, according to the U.S. Attorney at the time, Maxwell Wood, York had made 20 trips to Disney World where he had taken children from. Malachi York was sentenced to 135 years in federal prison. He lost all of his appeals, including to the U.S. Supreme Court. He is currently incarcerated in ADX Florence, which is a maximum security federal prison in Florence, Colorado. He will be eligible for parole in 21-22. In 2004, 7 officers of the Macon, Georgia Police Department actually resigned in protest against York's prosecution. 5 of the officers were hired by Clark County, Georgia, as guards for the jail, and in 2006, 4 of them were fired. 1 of them resigned. Why? They were facing charges of corresponding with York, smuggling Nuwaubian literature into the jail, and encouraging inmates to rebel against white guards, and accused of showing favoritism to Nuwaubian prisoners. Now, even though York was in prison at this time, the cult still had followers and continued to operate, moving to the Atlanta metro area around 2008. The compound was located on Georgia Highway 142 between Covington and Eatonton. York said he chose Putnam County because of Rock Eagle. Rock Eagle is an archaeological site created by Native Americans. Rock Eagle is actually really cool. I've been there many times, and I'll insert a picture. Now, the county demolished the buildings, and the compound was sold to the new owner in 2005, of which the new owner destroyed everything that was there, and it's now pretty much back to farmland. There's a lot more about the group, so I do encourage you to check them out. I didn't live here in Putnam County at the time. I just had family members that lived here. And I actually do remember driving down Highway 142 and seeing all of the pyramids, the Sphinx, and the other Egyptian structures. I really wish I had taken pictures at that point in time, but I have inserted pictures, and I will be inserting a video of what it looks like now. This land here used to be the Nubians' land. Not that gate, and not that house, not any of these houses, but all that land and more used to belong to the Nubians. Man, it's cold outside today. It's too hard to take a video while driving in the car to show everything. But like the pyramids and all that stuff, they were here. It was so weird looking. In the middle of Georgia, that's the only reason why it was weird. Well, thank you for taking a few minutes of your time to listen to my little story about the cult that was here in Georgia at one point in time. And I hope everybody has a very wonderful day.